faith, firearms, and freedom. This is Armed Lutheran Radio.
Hi folks, welcome to Armed Lutheran Radio, a show about guns, hunting, competitive shooting, the natural right of self-defense, and what God's Word says about the issues surrounding gun rights and gun ownership. I'm your host, Lloyd Bailey, the Armed Lutheran, and this is episode number 203. Happy New Year, everybody, and welcome to our first episode of 2020. It's the start of our fifth year, and I'm so glad that you could be here to share this with me today. What are your New Year's resolutions? Do you do New Year's resolutions? Personally, I don't really see the point because I never seem to succeed. In the past, I've made various promises to myself that this is going to be the year that I would do X. Get back in shape, spend more time with my family, do regular dry fire, shoot more matches, lose weight. It never seems to work. Within a few weeks, your old habits come back, and all the resolutions are in the waste bin with everything from the previous year. The problem is that habits are hard to break. If you've got to repeat something enough times for it to become a habit, suddenly changing your behavior just because it's the new year never really seems to work because, well, new habits are hard to establish, and we tend to set goals that are really beyond our reach. If your goal is too generic, you're never going to reach it because you don't have anything measurable. I want to work out more. I want to go to the range more. I want to do more dry fire. Well, that's great, but what does more mean? How do you define that? Working toward that big ultimate goal can also be frustrating and ultimately lead you to failure because it's out of your reach and it's hard to measure and see gains and improvement. You've got to set smaller, more achievable goals along the way. So I want to work out more becomes I'm going to go to the gym once a week, or I'll take a walk around my neighborhood twice a week, or if I want to go to the range more, that then becomes I'm going to the range on the first and third Saturdays every month. Or I'm going to go to my local club's, local IDPA match once a month. Doing more dry fire becomes I'm going to dry fire on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And you mark that on the calendar so that you don't forget. And once you've done that for a few weeks, it becomes a routine. And then if weight loss is your goal, because like me, you pigged out at Thanksgiving and Christmas, you can't set those goals too high. It would be nice to lose 30 pounds. Trust me, I know. But to get there, you got to set smaller goals along the way. You can't lose 30 if you don't lose 5. Then you lose another 5 and then another, and you set goals along the way. And each time you reach them, you've got some encouragement because you've accomplished another goal. And before long, you've reached the ultimate goal and maybe even more. But if you keep that goal out of your reach, you'll get discouraged ultimately. Sergeant Bill talks about level of participation. He's mentioned that in his Ballistic Minutes in the past. And that concept applies to more than just competitive training. Your level of participation is what you are willing and able to commit to, whether it's walking on the treadmill or doing dry fire. Don't set goals that are so ambitious that ultimately they become discouraging. If walking or running or exercising or dry fire once a week is all you can do that. That's better than doing nothing. And ultimately, once that becomes a habit, it'll be easier to do more. Plus, if you never start because, I just don't have the time to exercise every day. Well, you know what? You could exercise every other day maybe, or maybe you could exercise once a week. Find out what your level of participation is, whatever you're trying to accomplish, figure out that level of participation and do that. Doing a little something is better than doing nothing or trying to do a lot and then getting frustrated and quitting. You've heard the phrase, new year, new you. Well, who cares if it's a new year? The new you, however you define that, is possible any time of the year if you approach it with the right mindset. Figure out what your level of participation is for whatever the goal is and do that. It doesn't have to be lots of stuff. It doesn't have to be every day or, it doesn't even have to be every other day or every other, or 2 or 3 times a week. It could be once a week. Figure out what you can do, what you're willing to do, and do that. Now, if you have not seen it, we do have some goals and some plans for 2020. I posted a video a couple of weeks ago on YouTube called State of the Podcast, where I laid out some goals and plans for the show. Go and check that out. See what we've got planned for the new year. We've got all kinds of cool ideas, and some of those will require your assistance if you'd like to join us as part of the Reformation Gun Club and help support the show in the new year. Armed Lutheran Radio will continue to be listener funded. No advertising. We're not seeking advertising in 2020. We are funded by our listeners, mainly by the members of the Reformation Gun Club. So if you would like to support the show in the new year and see us continue doing what we're doing, check out the Gun Club at armedlutheran.us/gun club. And by the way, before we get started, I did want to tell you that one big book project that I've got going on that I think you'll find interesting. It's tentatively called, I haven't come up with a good title, but Gun Rights Apologetics. And it's a verse-by-verse debunking of the anti-gun arguments made by Christians on the left. And it's got articles by pastors, Lutheran pastors from around the country, former guests like Gavin Mize and Evan Gegline, my own pastor, Clint Stark, Tab Ottmers from here in Texas, Reverend Richard Boland from Colorado, Bob McCandless from, I believe he's in Pittsburgh in Pennsylvania, Paul Kane from Wyoming, and several others who are still working on their submissions. It's available for pre-order now if you're interested in getting a copy, and I'll link to that in the show notes so that you can pre-order it. And if you do, I will send you a signed copy, and I'll put your name on the back cover as a thank you for your support. And I'll give you a chance to help choose the title as well. So at some point, when it all comes together, we'll take suggestions and we'll find a way to all the pre-order, everyone who's involved in pre-ordering the book, we'll get them involved in choosing the title. So look for that in the show notes and pre-order that if you would be interested. It should be a really cool book. I've gotten a lot of the editing done at this point. There's still quite a bit to go, but it is an excellent book so far, and I think you will really enjoy it if you're interested in kind of a primer on how to counter the arguments from the left when they try to use Scripture to support gun control and to oppose gun rights. So look for that in the show notes as well. All right, enough rambling from me. It's time to get on with this week's show. We've got segments from all of our contributors today, Mia Anstein, Sergeant Bill Sylvia, and Pastor John Bennett. I'll be back with you next week with Pastor Bennett for our first Clinging to God and Guns episode. So sit back and enjoy today's show. I'll talk to you again next week.
It's time for Pastoral Pontifications with Pastor John Bennett.
Hello, folks, and welcome to the first segment of Pastoral Pontifications of the new year. Now, 2 weeks ago, I had hip surgery, and by now, I am so sick and tired of those stupid crutches. If I use the strength of my arms to support my weight with my hands on the grips, my hands ache like you wouldn't believe. Now, if I get sick of doing that and I use my arms, my armpits to support my weight, they hurt. I mean, there is no happy medium. And don't even get me started about my right hip. I had the surgery on my left hip, and it's my right hip that hurts like hell because I'm overcompensating for all the, carrying the weight of my whole body on just my right leg. It's just absolutely miserable. And me, I like to drink my whiskey at night before bed. I can't even do that because of the stupid pain medication. I'm just so fed up. I'm halfway through this. I don't know if I can quite make it. Lord help me. Now, if hearing that made you irritated and annoyed, good. That was the entire point of this segment. Recently, I had a visit from someone, and this person, gosh, they complained about everything. You could have given them a perfectly cooked steak on a silver platter, and they would have found something wrong with it. And then this person, they want perfection, and yet they have Dom Perignon taste, but Boone's Farm's budget. Now, I don't want to go on too much about that because then it's going to sound like I'm the one complaining here. But even my kids noticed something that, what's up with that? Why is it that they have to find fault with absolutely everything? Well, what I'm talking about here is contentment. Are you content? As we start the new year, many people are making New Year's resolutions, and a lot of those resolutions are because they aren't content with how they lived their life in the previous year. They aren't content with their pocketbook, their checking account, or their 401k. They aren't satisfied with their physical condition. They're too fat, they're too skinny, they need to bulk up, they need to slim down. Everyone is trying to think of what they can do to improve themselves in the new year because, frankly, they aren't content with themselves and with their lives. Now, yes, there are things that we can always be improving upon. And there are things that we should never be fully content with, which I'll get to in a minute. But before I go on with that, I wanted to read what St. Paul writes in his letter to the Christians at Philippi, as well as the words that he writes to St. Timothy. First, from Philippians chapter 4. Rejoiced in the Lord greatly that now at length you have revived your concern for me. You were indeed concerned for me. Keep in mind, during this time, Paul is in prison, but you had no opportunity. Now that I am speaking of being in need, for I have learned in whatever situation I am to be content. I know how to be brought low, and I know how to abound. In any and every circumstance, I have learned the secret of facing plenty and hunger, abundance and need. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. So Paul, he speaks of his misery that he's in, this state of affairs that he's found himself in where he is in prison, and Roman prisons, they were no picnic, I assure you. And Paul is saying that in every circumstance, he has learned to be content, that even in the midst of hunger, even in the midst of being brought low, of being humbled, he has learned to be content. That last verse, just a few notes on that. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, some translations put it. This is one of those passages that is so often taken out of context. What we are to understand within the context of this is Paul is saying that even within the most miserable of circumstances, it is Christ who strengthens us in our misery to be content and to persevere despite the conditions we find ourselves in. Moving on now to 1 Timothy chapter 6. Paul writes, "Now godliness with contentment is great gain." What we can take from those words at face value is that godliness by itself is great, obviously, but godliness with contentment is even greater. Paul goes on to say, "For we brought nothing into this world, and it is certain that we can carry nothing out. And having food and clothing, with these we shall be content." It is God who has given us everything. With the gifts that we have received, we ought to be content. But those who desire to be rich fall into temptation and a snare, and into many foolish and harmful lusts, which drown men in destruction and perdition. For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil, to which some of you have strayed from the faith in great greediness, and pierced themselves through with many sorrows. What we can take, especially from those last words, is that when we are not content, when we pursue to fatten ourselves with the provisions that God, in His infinite wisdom, has seen not to provide for us, and yet we pursue after those things anyway, Paul says that this has caused a great deal of sorrow for those who pursue these things, who pursue wealth, who do not pursue first Christ and His kingdom and the things pertaining to the Christian faith. So to put a nice bow on all of this, we are to be content. If you are to make any New Year's resolution that's worthwhile, it is this: be content with the rich blessings that Christ has so richly, generously blessed you with. What a wonderful thing to be content, to be happy, to not be pursuing the latest and greatest thing, to not be sitting there and figuring, hey, I can just put it on the credit card. At least I can have this stuff, this material thing. No, that's not the way it ought to be. For it is in Christ that we have our sufficiency. It is He who makes us content, for He is all that we truly need. Yes, we need food and we need clothing, and yet read Matthew chapter 6. That Christ says, don't worry about these things. Your Father in heaven knows that you need all of these things. Now, I mentioned earlier about not being content with something and that it was okay to not be content with it. It is okay to not be content with the current state of your faith life. For how many of us could not better our faith, strengthen our faith through more prayer, through more study of the Scriptures, through more faithful attendance in the worship service? Never be content with the current state of your spiritual life. For the closer you walk in faith, the more you study the Scriptures, the more you bring your petitions before our Father in heaven in prayer, the more your faith is strengthened and increased, the more fulfilling your faith life with Christ is, and the more you will be strengthened in your faith to be content with the blessings that our Father in heaven has so generously showered upon you. So in the new year, be content. I pray that you are blessed in this new year beyond your wildest dreams, that our Lord gives you far more than we either desire or deserve, that we may be richly blessed and filled with the good gifts that He gives to us. A very blessed and happy new year to you all. We'll talk to you next time.
John Bennett is the pastor at St. John's Lutheran Church in Willow Creek, Minnesota. For more information, visit stjohnswillowcreek.org. Time now for Mia's Motivations with Mia Anstein.
Hey guys, it's Mia here. Happy New Year! I am so happy to be chatting with you again, and I really am at a loss. Well, I was at a loss, and now I think I have an idea. I knew exactly what I was going to share with you, and then Lloyd threw a wrench into my gears because he said, if you have ideas for New Year's tips, then go ahead and share them. And I went, wait a second, because, well, I do have goals and resolutions and a calendar for my year. I really hadn't had any plans for you for your year because, I mean, come on, like that's kind of overstepping my boundaries, right? Well, I have been giving it a lot of thought, and my typical thing for you guys is I want you guys to get out there. I want you to learn as much as you can. I want you to educate others. I want us to communicate with non-gun owners and communicate with our legislators, try to save the Second Amendment, and so on and so on. But while I was contemplating what kind of a New Year's tip I could give you, I kind of thought about a meme that I've seen before, and it's one that kind of makes me laugh. When you go into your house, do you check around, or like, do you check in the hotel behind the shower curtain to make sure no boogeymen are there? While you're checking, what are you going to do if one day somebody is behind the closet door or behind the shower curtain? Do you have a plan? What's your plan? And that's something that I think you should do in the new year, just like a fire drill. What's your plan if somebody is in your house? What is your plan if you're at the gas pump and somebody approaches you? What is your plan if something bad happens? What is your fire drill for these situations? And while you're looking at these plans, there's a lot of work that you need to do as a gun owner. And I was looking up, I had seen this list from Beth Alcazar last year, and she shared this on the usconcealedcarry.com website. And it's 7 New Year's resolutions that every gun owner should make and keep. And I'm not going to go through all her details. You can look it up on their website if you would like, but I would like to touch on a lot of them. One of them is carry your gun consistently. I know a lot of people who have guns and they don't carry their guns. They have their gun and they leave it in their car. They have their gun and they leave it in their house. So carry it consistently. And while you're carrying your gun consistently, this is something I am adding in, is you better practice with the method that you're carrying. And she has that on her list, train better and more often. Well, I've talked about it before. You better learn how to draw from your ankle holster. You better learn how to draw from the small of your back without muzzle sweeping your torso. Something else she says is be more situationally aware. And this is something that I probably am overboard on, but I'll share with you in a future episode a reason why I don't think I'm overboard. So stay tuned for that. She also says stay formed and be active. Take somebody new to the shooting range. And this has to do with something that I've shared in the past, the National Shooting Sports Foundation's +1 movement. That is when you go to the range, take someone with you. So +1, add somebody, take somebody with you. Next on our list is take care of your firearms and take care of yourself. If you're not healthy, if you aren't training, if you aren't mentally prepared, then you're not going to be ready. So take care of yourself, take care of your guns. If you have something, I have a gun in my saddle scabbard, and that thing, I go through a hunting season, there's rain, there's dirt, there's pine needles, and so you have to take care of it. What good is it going to do me if I have bad ammunition in there or if I haven't cleaned it and it's not going to function? So those are some tips for the new year. I would say, just like she says, like, do it and keep it. And this doesn't mean just do them one time. Do this consistently. Be on the top of your game. And something else that I would add is pay attention to what's going on in our country. Read the articles that you see headlines for, because some of these headlines are very misleading, and I see people commenting on posts that aren't really what the headline says they are. Something else that I would suggest is if you can ever watch live news briefings, watch those, because news channels definitely cut and chop to fit their agendas. I hope that you all had a great holiday, and I hope that you will have a fantastic 2020. I'll talk to you next time. Bye, my friends.
You can read more from Mia, watch her YouTube videos, or check out her podcast, Mac Outdoors with Mia and Leah, at miaanstein.com. Time now for another Ballistic Minute with Sergeant Bill Sylvia.
Hey everybody, I'm Sergeant Bill, and this is your Ballistic Minute. Today I'm going to talk about my EDC, or my everyday carry, my carry gun and equipment. Okay, so I carry a Glock 19. It's a Gen 5 model. It's the MOS, the modular optic sight, with front serrations. On top of it, I have a Trigicon RMR, I think it's an RMR 07. It's the 6 MOA dot, which is minute of angle. It means covers 6 inches of a target at 100 yards. On the rail, I have a Streamlight TLR7, which is a mini weapon light, which is kind of interesting that I carry that. I wanted to try it out, and I bought a holster for it, and I've been carrying it like that for a while, and sometimes I have the light on it, sometimes I don't. The interesting part about it is I'm not really convinced that most people need a weapon light on their concealed carry gun, mostly because a weapon light on a handgun is used for searching. As a police officer, I've searched many buildings and, used lights, weapon lights all the time, but it's pretty limited, in my opinion, when someone that's just carrying for personal protection would ever need a weapon light to search for something. And everybody says, well, you need to identify your target or whatever. And I get that, but you don't really ever use a weapon in a situation where it's pitch black, because if you can't see, then the people coming after you that are trying to hurt you can't see you. If you go to YouTube and go on to the Active Self-Protection channel by John Correa, you'll see that he's looked at videos around the world of, I don't remember the number, it's thousands of gunfights that have occurred that have been on video. And I've heard him in interviews, and he's pretty much said that there has been probably less than 10 that he's ever seen where someone used a weapon light or needed to use a weapon light. Most of the time, there's enough ambient light that you can see any threats and or identify them and your targets. So, side rant over. Okay, now I usually carry that Glock in a holster, always. But I have two different ones that I normally carry in when I'm carrying concealed. One is a Tier 1 concealment appendix in the waistband holster. It's called an Axis Slim. Now, the Axis Slim isn't just a gun holster. It also comes with a mag pouch holster attached to it. So when I go out, I'll have a gun and a mag, extra mag in case, magazine has problems or I need more ammo. The other holster that I use is a Raven Concealment Eidolon, which is an appendix in the waistband holster. It doesn't have a mag pouch, and sometimes I'll carry a spare mag in a pocket magazine holster. It's kind of like a pocket gun holster, but it's for a magazine. And or I'll just have a single mag pouch, on my hip and use that to carry a spare mag. And if we're going to dump the rest of the stuff out, I've also got a pocket light I carry in one of my back pockets. It's a Streamlight ProTac 1L. Great little flashlight. It's smaller than a roll of nickels and super bright light. Battery lasts a good long time. I use that thing all the time. Even in daylight, you'll drop something inside somewhere in your car and you need a little light, or a million different times I've used that light. Matter of fact, I use it so often, I go through the batteries probably once every other month or so. I used to carry a pocket knife, and I started realizing that I was getting these really nice pocket knives and basically just destroying the blades and then resharpening them. And because I was using them for administrative stuff, cutting open boxes, cutting tape, cutting rope and string and stuff like that. And what I really needed was something that had a little more usefulness. So my mother-in-law has gotten me on several of her vacations. She'll pick me up a monogrammed Swiss Army style knife, and I'll usually carry one of those, which is really nice because it's got a little pair of scissors, it's got a knife blade, it's got a corkscrew, it's got a whole bunch of neat little tools that I actually use and doesn't take up much space in my pocket. Oh yeah, one more thing I want to add to my gun stuff. So carrying a Glock 19, I replaced the Glock base plates with the Vickers Tactical mag floor plates. And the spare mag that I usually carry is a Glock 17 mag, because why not? It just gives me a couple extra rounds, and it's a lot easier to load than a smaller Glock 19 mag. Now, those Vickers base plates, the reason I picked those out was because carrying appendix with that, sidecar magazine right in front, the magazine, the Glock magazines, the back corner of them has a pretty sharp 90-degree point. And I started noticing that, you always print a little bit here and there, but that point was really sticking out and would kind of draw your attention. Didn't matter what kind of shirt you had on. So I searched and tried to find a magazine floor plate for a Glock magazine that didn't have that 90-degree corner. And the Vickers Tactical mag plates are actually kind of rounded. They're a little wider than stock on the sides, but because of that, there's a ledge that you can kind of strip the magazine out if you need to. And it also, because it rounds that back corner more, it's a round printing and just looks like, your gut or something. So it's a little more natural looking under a shirt than a 90-degree corner pointing out. Okay, so the reason for me talking about my EDC is, like I said in my last show, I was going to start working on my carry stuff, which I have been. So I had a Glock 19, but I got this new one because it's an MOS, because I wanted to put a dot on it, because a dot's the future, right? Maybe it's the present. I don't know. They're really cool, though, and I really, really like having my Trigicon armor on there. I've always fought being a target-focused shooter, and with the red dot, you don't have to fight that anymore. So it's really kind of nice, and I really like it. So to practice with that red dot, I've been doing a lot of draws, a lot of presentations, just trying to get used to bringing the gun up and having the dot where I want it to be. I put some Ameriglow suppressor height sights on it, the protectors, I think. Might be Hackathorn, I don't remember which ones they are. But it makes it nice because the red dot's not perfectly co-witnessed with the sights, but it's pretty close. So if I'm doing a one-handed draw or something, it's a lot easier to just start to align the iron sights and boom, there's the red dot. So it's just kind of shows up when you need it. So I usually start my dry fire with just, some slow draws and a lot of presentations, just, marrying the two hands together, putting them together right in front of you, and then pressing the gun out to sights. Doing that over and over and over just to kind of get used to where the sights will be and the dot, doing it one-handed and doing it weak hand or support hand only, so that I can get a lot of practice at it and get a lot more consistent with it. So then after that, I go on to just my carry draws, and I'll do 3 different versions, or maybe 4 different versions of this. I'll do a hands at surrender, and not the competition surrender where your wrists are above your shoulders, but, really just my hands kind of in front of my chest, like if somebody was in front of me and I was going, hey, whoa, what's going on, buddy? The next one is just hands at your sides. They're just down at your sides. And then I'll do a strong hand only. And when I do that, I will make sure that I've got my weak hand simulating, and I actually use it on like a door frame or a wall or something, back behind me like I've got one of my kids with me, or there's somebody that I'm trying to, kind of push behind me and step in front of. And then I have to draw, clear my shirt and grab the gun and draw with just my strong hand only. After doing a few of those, or maybe more than a few, I'll move on to practicing some carry reloads. And I'll do it with the different holsters that I have. So I'll do some with the, if I'm carrying the attached mag pouch, I'll practice with those. If I'm carrying the other holster that doesn't have the attached mag pouch, I'll practice reloads with the separate mag pouch, whether it be in the waistband right next to the holster, or outside the waistband clipped onto my hip on the belt, or even from my magazine, pocket magazine pouch that I have. Sometimes I've even put on a sweatshirt or a jacket, and I will put a magazine in the jacket if I know it's cold out and I'm wearing just a jacket, and I'll practice doing my draws with the spare dummy round loaded magazine in my coat pocket, just to kind of simulate what it would be like if I really needed it. Okay, then occasionally I've gotten out to the range in the last month or so to do some live fire drills. The weather hasn't been too horrible here. We've had some rain, we've had some cold, but it's North Texas, so it kind of snaps back every now and then, and we get some nice weather. So once in a while, I'll go out to the range and do some live fire drills. Mostly what I've been working on is the doubles drill, and doubles drill is just draw and or you don't even worry about the draw. It's 2 shots. You're trying to do 2 shots at a certain distance and with acceptable accuracy. And even more than shooting doubles, I've been working on a draw to 2. So you'll draw from concealment and fire 2 shots. And I do that at different ranges, everywhere from 3 yards all the way back to about 20. And then last but not least, I'll do a draw to headshot, just so that I can get used to, if really needed to, at decent ranges. I mean, we're talking close, 3 yards out to maybe 10 tops, where I would, might have to take a very accurate shot like that. So it's good to practice it. So that's pretty much my everyday carry and my carry gun. I'll tell you this, it's made a huge difference on my shooting and how much it slows you down a little bit, and you really work more on your accuracy when you're not using a competition gun with a competition trigger. A stock Glock trigger isn't horrible, but it's a big difference between a, maybe 3 to 4 pound short competition setup style trigger. So it takes a little more work, but it sure makes going back to that competition gun seem really easy. And let's be honest, in today's world, whether you're law enforcement or a veteran or just a parent or just a regular person, you really need to take your personal safety into consideration and prepare for it, just like you would anything else. So get your gear, get your stuff squared away, get some dry fire, get out to the range and practice, and most importantly, have fun. I'm Sergeant Bill. This has been your Ballistic Minute.
Sergeant Bill Sylvia is a veteran of the Dallas Police Force and a masterclass competitive shooter. You can check out his YouTube videos at armedlutheran.us/Sergeant Bill. Got a question or a comment about something you heard on today's show? Visit our feedback page at armedlutheran.us/feedback and leave us a voice message or send us an email. We'd love to hear from you. For show notes, be sure to visit our website at www.armedlutheran.us. Check out the Facebook page, The Armed Lutheran, or join our Facebook group, Fans of Armed Lutheran Radio. If you like what you hear, please leave us a comment on our feedback page at armedlutheran.us/feedback or a review on iTunes and let us know what you think. Thank you for listening to Armed Lutheran Radio, a member of the Self-Defense Radio Network.